All right, so here's the drawing that I did from the other lecture. This is my first key position. So the things that I had to consider were where are my hips going to be placed? So as we begin this new one here, what I want you to do is start off with your hips. Okay, you're just going to have a line spreading across a page like this. Let me get it in focus here. Focus. Thank you. Okay. So we're just going to draw a line across here for our hips. Now, this is the one where our lips or hips are being presented towards us, so we don't want to make them too wide. You don't want them way out over here, because that's going to create a larger spread on the distance of your hips. So we want to try and keep it a little bit closer, so don't make it too wide. So just something like that. We're going to put the spinal column in here, just a little line coming down, just to give us an anchor so that we've got something that it's going to pivot around on. And then we choose to create the distance that you want your feet to be. Okay, so, and that's totally up to you. The further you put it apart, the bigger a stride you're going to be having. So I'll do a slightly longer stride on this one. So I'm just drawing my thigh bone down to my kneecap and stretching this part here out. And then taking my back one and just pushing it out a little bit further as well. Okay. First, now, what I need to do at this point is I need to determine where is my vanishing point. So I'm going to place my vanishing point, if my character had their chest up here, place it somewhere right about there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my grid for my character, my plane that my character is going to be standing on. So from this vanishing point, I'm going to go through the heel on this side here, and through the heel on the back foot. Create two lines going in that direction. And then I'm just going to choose an arbitrary vanishing point, pretty much parallel out here, but along the direction of the foot on the one side there. And then from the heel back like this. Okay, so I've got my one key position is here, my other key position is over here. So this is drawing number one on this side, this is drawing number one on this side, my two key positions. Which means that as the foot travels back, I need to do my opposing position, which is going to be drawing number 9 back here and drawing number 9 in the forward position. All right, so let's take another sheet of paper. And using our grid here, we're just going to place a mark on this point here, which is in perspective, this one. And then we're going to find this point back here, which is right about there. This will be drawing number 9. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my key drawing number 1, just have it underneath there so I can reference it. And we're now going to draw the legs in opposition. So, to the vanishing point out here, my hip on the one side is going to be somewhere back here, because now we're swinging the hips in opposition to each other. So this hip is going to move back, this one's going to move forward. So therefore my one hip will be roughly about here, and the other hip will be roughly about there, in that twist. So we've got that type of a twist taking place. So now I want to draw the front leg. This is the left leg on this side. I'm going to draw my right leg on this side coming from here. And I need to go through my vanishing point. It's up here through the knee to find that intersection point. So these two lines are going parallel to each other now. There's the intersection point. There's my knee right there. Then going through to the point on the ground. That's going to be my heel. I'll just match up the angle right here on my foot. Create the foot on the closest side here. So that's just that leg switching back and forth there. So now going from this hip and the knee to the vanishing point, I need to go down parallel to this leg here, where it crisscrosses through there. That'll be the knee on the opposite side. And then down to my tick point here, which is the foot on the grid. To that point there. Okay, so there's my two legs in opposition to each other now. So now what I need to do is I need to figure out what my number 5 position is going to look like and my number 13 position, which are my breakdowns. So back to my grid here, I've got my number 1 position, number 9, number 1, number 9, and the 2 opposing feet. So I need to equally divide this, okay, with halves, quarters, and eighths. So I'm just going to find the distance between here and here, half that, half it again to a quarter, and half each of these to eighths. And that now gives me my evenly spaced movement for the foot along the ground. So this is drawing number 1. I have to do it on the opposite side because it's got to travel this way, and then it's going to loop forward. So on this back side here, it's going from number 9, this will be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 into 1, and then it's going to loop up and swing down onto the ground and then come up here and drop down. That'll be the path of action for the forward motion of the foot. So on the back side here, I do the exact same thing, find the halfway position between these 2 points. There's my mid stride right there, my quarters, and my eighths. And so now I can number these. This is 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my breakdown right there. 6, 7, 8 into 9. Then these loop forward on this side. Then 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. 13 is my breakdown right there. So I know exactly where my heels are going to be on those 2 drawings. So now I can take my blank sheet of paper. This will be my breakdown number 5. I find the heel position for number 5 is right there. So I put a dot there. That's where my heel is going to be. Oops. That's where my heel is going to be on the ground. I can draw my foot coming out like that. So I don't need my grid until I do number 13. So going from 1 to 9, there's my foot placement for number 5, half the distance between. So that's this foot here moving back to that position there. So now what I have to do is I have to figure out what is my body going to be doing. Am I going to be bending the legs? Am I going to keep them straight? How is this going to move? So I'm going to keep it fairly straight overall. So what I need to find here is my pelvis and my spine. I need this line right here. So I'm just going to lightly draw that in because I want to keep it on that point, just basically moving up and down. Right? I'm not going to complicate it by putting in a swivel in the hips or anything like that. That we can do later on when we go to the walk cycle. So we're just going to have this move up and down on this point. So here's what I need to do. I'm taking my leg, it's my left leg over here, from this position to the back position over here. So what I want to do is I want to connect my heels and line the leg line here up with my spine. So what I'm doing is I'm essentially trying to find what the length of this leg is going to be and where the hip placement is going to be, like that. Now, because it's working in perspective, this leg is further back from this leg here because the perspective is working back in that direction. If I lay these over top of each other, you'll see the difference between the 2 legs. See how the hip is dropping down? I've got the heels lined up, but the hip is getting shorter. So therefore, I have to line up this hip with my number 9 drawing now, lining up the heels, and here's where my hip is on this drawing here. So because this is moving back and it's going half the distance in between, I now have to find half the distance between these 2 points as well so that the perspective on my leg maintains itself. Otherwise the leg's going to shrink or grow too quickly. Right? So that halfway position between those 2 balls for the length is going to be where my hip is going to be on this drawing. So I also have to correspond that to the movement that's taking place. So because my hip is moving back and forth here between those 2 drawings, I've got to find the center point between those 2 and line my ball up to the center. So it's actually just going to shift a little bit right there. So the path of action is now from number 1 over here, it's going up and then back down. So it's looping over in this direction here like that. So I'll just erase my other balls there. And that'll be my hip on the one side. My knee is going to be moving back over here. It's going to have a little bit of an arc going this direction here. So that knee is going to be right there. So now the legs look very, very stiff. Okay, but that's because I haven't put in my breakdown drawings. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my opposite hip from here to here. Now usually what happens is when you straighten your leg here, this hip is going to bear all the weight. So it's going to be higher. That's why it's going up in this drawing. The hip on the opposite side, we're releasing the weight because it's coming off of the ground and the knee is swinging forward. So the knee is going from this position back here into this position here. So it's moving from here to here. So the path of action on that is going to go in this direction here, which means that my hip also has to dip slightly. So my hip on this side is here, which is right there, and it's going to this position right here, so it's actually going to dip lower, down like that. Not a huge amount, but just a little bit. So it's going to go in that direction. There's my spine being connected, so now there's the swivel that's taking place. Okay, so I need to find the halfway position for my knee now. Now this is not necessarily a pure halfway position, because don't forget, as the knee swings forward, remember what I was talking about before in the demonstration, that before I get to this position here, it has to go out and beyond, and then comes back, right? So my actual key position is out here, which is on the drawing before number 9, which is number 8. So I've got to take and consider that my key position goes out to there. So I'm actually going to put my halfway over here for number 5. Okay, so it swings slightly forward into this position here. Now, the heel is going to kick up in the air and loop around and come down and forward this way. I don't want the heel to touch the ground, so I've got to be mindful of where my floor line is along this line here. But I'm not exactly sure where exactly I'm going to put that heel. Okay, so I'm not really going to worry about it too much. I do know that it has to come probably something like this, and then loop through here, and then it's going to kick forward and then come down into that position. So I know that my drawing before I get to number 9, this is going to be number 8 where it's up here. 8 is there. And right here, in this back position, this is my number 1 drawing right here. So I'll probably have, there's a key position right there for the heel, because it's changing direction and looping back down again. So I'm probably going to have an in-between there. So if this is number, what is that? That's number 2, sorry, 1, 2, this will be 3, and then as it swings down here, I've got to get to number 8. So 4, 5, 6, 7. I might want to have a little bit of a slow in here. I might also want to have a slow out there. So I might put number 4 right there. Number 5 might go right about there, and 6 about there, and then 7 somewhere in there. So that means if that's the case, that's where my heel has to be right there. And I don't want it to go through the ground, so I've got to make sure that the toe is skimming the surface there. So that's basically where it's going to be. So it's going to go up and back, 2, 3, 4, then 5 is right there. So there's how you sort of plot out where your heel is going to go. You just think it through logically. Okay, create a little path of action and start to figure out where are my high points, low points, how do I want to subdivide this, do I want to slow in. So here now is where this is not necessarily a halfway position. Okay? It just depends on what you want it to do. I could have delayed this, I could have put it back here and made this swing forward here fairly fast in that area if I wanted to. Okay, so it's totally up to you as to how you decide to plot your path of action. So it's coming up and over like this, and through to that point there, so I've got a key there, and then I got a key there, and a key there, and a key here. This is just for the heel. These are all in-betweens actually. My keys are actually here and here. So having said that, what I could do is I could go from here, I could slow up into this position by putting my next in-between there. That could be my number 2. Number 3 is the high point where it then changes direction. And so what I'm saying is as I swing down into this position here, going from number 3 through to number 8 at that position there, there's nothing to say that I can't do this. I can't put number 4 here and then start to spread a little bit further apart. 5 is there, then put 6 down here, and then have 7 start to slow into that position. So I'm slowing out and slowing in. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so I could break up my timing chart like that, which means that if that's my number 5 point there, I could actually shift my heel slightly further back there and still be okay. It just means that this is going to go faster in here, right? If I put this drawing over here, it means it's going to go even faster because the spacing on it is bigger. Okay, still 2 frames in there, but the greater the distance means it's going to go faster, right? So these are some things that you need to start to consider in your own mind as we're getting into this type of animation, where it's up to you to decide what the action is going to be. You're in control of how this character moves. And just by subtly moving the foot back there will now cause this action here to be faster, if that's what I desire. If I want it to be all very mechanical and smooth, I would subdivide each of those equally. But I don't necessarily want that to take place. I do want the floor, as it goes along the floor, that has to be even, because that's a mechanical movement. So when you're on a treadmill, it has to go that way. Otherwise you get, fits and starts and jerking action. Okay, so there's my breakdown number 5. Now what I want to do is I want to do my opposite drawing, which is number 13. My breakdown on the opposite side. So I pull out my grid again, find my number 13 position over here. There's where my heel's going to be on this side, so my foot's going to be along that plane right there. I'm going to take my grid off because I don't need it anymore. Now I need to draw the mirror image of this one. So I can use my vanishing point that I have up here and go through the knee on this side here, through the knee, and find that point, because it's going straight up and down here. That'll give me the point for my knee. Now we have to do the same thing that we did last time. Remember how we did the measurement thing? So now we're doing this closest leg here. I've got to find my heel to the height of the hip, which is up there. And then on the opposite drawing, this is not going to vary as much. It'll still get shorter because it's going back, but not as much as the farthest one. So there's the distance between those two drawings there. So now when I line these up, you can see where the two balls are for the hips here and here. So I've got to find the halfway point in between those on an arc up this way. So the halfway between these two is right there, and it's got to shift over to this position here to be between these two balls here and here. So I've got to put it right about there. Okay, so that makes it pop up and over this way. So now I just have to make a subtle little adjustment here to make sure that those lines stay in line. I'm going to pull my knee over to here and adjust that line like that. So that now is my closest leg going back. Okay. And then I have to consider the same action as I did on the opposite side. I'm going from this hip here on the far side to this hip here, but remember it dips down because I'm taking the weight off that leg. So it's just going to come down slightly. So this is going to go on an angle like that. And I keep my spine in line there. So now I can pull up my number 5 drawing and just do the mirror of this one for this closest leg on the far side. So this line here, from there coming down through the perspective of here where the knee is, it's just going to be slightly lower here, down to there. Match the angle on this side here. There's the angle. Okay, so now it's going to crisscross through there. So now I have to start to think about what's the distance between the feet here and here. What's the distance between this foot and the other foot on the other side in perspective. So it's going to line up. You can see that from this foot here and the heel, it's just slightly above it. So I want to go from the heel on this side slightly above it and maintain that angle. So therefore my heel is going to bisect through where the leg is there on the opposite side. So that gives me my, it's like he's doing a little tap dance there. Yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da.